I'm joined now by two of the hosts for the QAnon Anonymous podcast, Jake Rockatansky and Travis View. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure, kind of.
So, yeah, kind of. So y'all are the foremost experts on all things conspiracy theories, kind of downstream from QAnon. And I think what we're seeing right now as the Epstein files are front and center in the news is, and I feel like I have to give an apology here, because a lot of this stuff where it relates to, the basis of QAnon, that there's this elite pedophile ring, this cabal of people who act with impunity. A lot of us on the left, I think, scoffed at this because it just seems so fantastical. But in fact, I think we're seeing, as it relates to Epstein, that it's very much a real thing. I mean, maybe not, a pedophile ring in the basement of a pizza place that has no basement, but in effect, this stuff does exist. And so I'm curious, as you have all of these adherents to the whole QAnon conspiracy theory and the whole QAnon universe, whether there's any acknowledgement of the fact that the people that they voted for to usher in exposure on all of this stuff are the very people that are participating in the crime that they want to condemn.
No, I wouldn't say that there is a lot of self-awareness about that. I mean, because they spin these wild stories on the idea that, for example, Trump was somehow undercover working with Epstein to take him down. They credit Trump with the fact that Epstein was arrested under his last administration, even though he was not sort of watched carefully enough that allowed him to die in his prison cell, and they also credit him with the fact that these files are being released now. There's not a lot of acknowledgement, even though Trump was a close associate of Epstein, and so was, as we've discovered in these emails, so was Howard Lutnick, the current Secretary of Commerce, and Steve Bannon was also extremely close with Epstein. They exchanged hundreds of messages, according to this new tranche of documents.
Well, it seems like there's just this really blatant cognitive dissonance then, because, I guess the question is this more about exposing this cabal of pedophiles, or is it about protecting Trump? Because anybody who is acting in good faith, who's legitimately interested in taking down or exposing the people involved in this pedophile ring, could easily see, okay, Trump is involved, Lutnick is involved. He named Alex Acosta, who obviously gave Epstein his sweetheart deal in his first term. He was involved. Trump's new Fed chair pick was implicated in the Epstein files. And so you have all these people. Anybody acting in good faith would just be able to say, okay, these people are clearly not on the level. They are the very people that we're seeking to expose. And so is QAnon more about exposing pedophiles, this cabal of pedophiles, or is it about just protecting Trump?
I think you can see two sort of differing systems of belief here, and it tends to be between the QAnon influencers and your sort of standard on-the-ground believers. I mean, if you go to the most popular sort of QAnon, pro-QAnon accounts on X, they also are combing through the Epstein files and finding things that label people that, kind of match their general area of target. So they too are combing through, and ignoring everything else. And I mean, Travis pointed out to me, we had an episode come out about 7 years ago that was called Epstein, the Real Pizzagate. This has always been the hardest part of my job, is on some level understanding that QAnon directionally is kind of right, given everything that we know about Epstein. And
yeah.
I think you have a lot of influencers, at least that I've seen, who are going to do whatever they can to keep reframing the information as it comes out to align with, their pro-QAnon beliefs. Now, I do think there is an opportunity for your run-of-the-mill believer to see this, and if they are, here's the question: are they more passionate about, anti-pedophilia than they are pro-Trump? And I do think that the answer for some is yes. I think this could be a potential exit ramp, in the same way that when Trump called Epstein a hoax, think about that now, given everything that's come out. But when he called it a hoax, there were a lot of people who said, wait a minute, absolutely not,
Yeah.
And they they began to kind of fall away.
Well, what are you guys seeing in online forums and stuff? I mean, you have to part of your job is that you have to subject yourself to an even darker part of the internet than even I have to deal with on a daily basis. And so but that's your loss is our gain. And so what are you seeing on these online forums from folks?
I mean, there's lots of like claims of like vindication, if you can believe it, from these people, just because like the general narrative about like elite corruption and child abuse and cover-ups and elite impunity was generally correct. But like we mentioned, like on our podcast, we've been talking about that for like 7+ years. I mean, the fact that there's elite abuse and impunity and people who sometimes abuse children and cover up for those who do. That part has been well known. We've got a lot more details about what this network looks like thanks to these documents. But they do this thing where they sort of retreat into these abstractions where they feel like, well, they were generally right, and so their wildest nonsense about pizza code words are also right, which is just not the case.
But they feel vindicated at the fact that they ushered in a Trump administration who are themselves the ones who are implicated in all of this. And so where does the vindication come from? Okay, yes, that there is a cabal of people, but the people who they empowered to expose all of this stuff are the ones who did it. And so does that part ever register?
Well, I mean, kind of baked into the theory. There's so many little rules kind of baked into QAnon that allow you to kind of opt out when you run up against a piece of real information that makes
something
the
that's
entire
inconvenient.
that makes the entire mind pyramid collapse otherwise. And one thing that has been consistent is that Trump is I remember what's really interesting about the Epstein stuff is that QAnon and people and conspiracy theorists, they would always use Epstein as like a stepping stone to then launch into another unproven conspiracy to say that that's real. That they never talk about the facts of Epstein itself, but they would always use Epstein to say, well, because Epstein exists, then all of these other conspiracy theories about Hillary Clinton and all this stuff are real. And they've consistently believed that Trump has infiltrated this circle. All of the stuff about Trump, being a Democrat in a former life, being friends with the Clintons, and attending Chelsea's wedding, all of his interactions with Epstein that we've seen up until this point.
He was just a double agent this entire time for the last 50 years.
Exactly. Now, my brother sent me a video this morning of him audibly shitting his pants during a meeting and ending the meeting. So the idea of him being like Liam Neeson from Taken and infiltrating like the biggest, child trafficking ring, and he is this sort of hero at the center, is becoming less and less plausible. But it was unplausible in 2017, right. When the first Q drops started happening. So the idea, if they believed it then, it's they're gonna believe it now,
right? Is there? I mean, why do you need like Epstein to be a stepping stone into some bigger conspiracy when Epstein's situation in and of itself is already gigantic? I mean, you have world leaders, you have princes, you have, I'm sure, you have all of these people. I mean, Elon Musk, who was planning visits to Epstein's island that we found out. Half the Trump administration is named in these files. Why do you need this to be just like some little stepping stone to a more vast conspiracy theory when this is pretty damn vast unto itself?
Yeah, I share your frustration with the way they interpret things, because I always feel like, isn't this enough? What we know, isn't this relevant enough? Isn't this outrageous enough without having to add on all of these extra sort of wilder theories that have no evidentiary basis at all? And I think the problem with a lot of conspiracists is that they're really attracted to this idea of secret esoteric information. information. And if it's being reported in everywhere, if it's provable in documents to the point that just normal casual news consumers know about it, it's no longer secret and esoteric.
Right. It's kind of like embracing conspiracy theory because they want to be in that world of conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and they want to feel like they have sort of they possess a higher level of knowledge of how the world works than everyone else. I feel like this feeling of specialness, I think, is really more important to them than sort of adhering to what's known and what's well in evidence.
Do you think that it was a mistake for the Trump orbit? And I don't necessarily say Trump himself, because I don't think he was ever that involved in the QAnon stuff, but there were plenty of people in Trump's orbit who were. Do you think it was a mistake for them to embrace this, given the fact that, we're now in a situation where all of these people themselves are either implicated or are part of an administration that's implicated in this, and so it's only reflecting poorly off of them? There's no world in which the last few releases of the Epstein files do anything but reflect poorly on Trump and Bannon and Lutnick and Warsh and any Elon Musk, whoever it may be. So do you think that embracing this whole world from the outset, given where we are now, was a mistake?
Well, I mean, I think politically, maybe their idea was they're going to sort of encourage this sort of this very passionate but minority base of people who believe that Trump and his circle can do no wrong, and anyone who opposes him are pure evil, right? And all of a sudden you don't have to worry about things like proving your case. I mean, I feel like this was sort of their way of trying to solidify their base and keep them in a bubble and keeping them from ever questioning why for example, Epstein called Trump is his best friend in a recording and these sorts of things. I mean, I think it's kind of a desperate strategy, but I think that was probably what they were trying to do.
Yeah, my general opinion is that they kind of had no choice to a certain degree. I see this happen with Trump just since 2016, is he's constantly kind of left with the bottom of the barrel as he sort of peels away anybody still reasonable that's sort of in his orbit. And like Travis said, I think there must have been some kind of internal data that QAnon was enough of a contingency and enough of a voter block that they eventually had no choice. And who knows? I mean, in the early days, I remember they were trying to distance themselves from QAnon as much as possible. And it was Trump who was going, well, I don't know, I think they like me quite a bit. He was the one who kind of, he couldn't stop talking about him because they were, they loved him the most.
Right. I mean, the crazy thing, even with the shooting of Renee Good, who was the perfect foil for Trump, the fact that her parents were apparently Trump supporters, that gets to him. It doesn't matter ideology or beliefs or philosophy. Right. He just likes that you like him. That's it.
I mean, I think he's very strategic in terms of coalition building, where he's even if he doesn't necessarily agree with people, he said that when there's only 2 times he was really asked about QAnon during his first administration, and one of the times he asked what he knew about it, he said I know they like me very much, and that's really all that's important to him. It's he knew that these were people who were passionate about them, who supported him, and he was not interested in alienating them as a consequence of that.
What is the state of the QAnon movement right now? I presume that it probably peaked sometime around 2016, 2017, 2018, maybe around the time that Marjorie Taylor Greene was getting into Congress. But I'm just curious whether you think that it's hit its peak, or whether we're still seeing this movement grow as more people come online, more people get sucked into rabbit holes and conspiracy theories, and we have obviously less digital literacy with the introduction of more AI and on and on. I feel like just people's general sense of what's real and what's not is kind of getting worse, not better.
Well, I mean, I think it kind of just sort of got absorbed into the wider kind of like right-wing media sphere. I mean, we saw recently, like with just a few weeks ago, that the Department of Labor Twitter account was tweeting out QAnon-related slogans, and so it's like either someone at the Department of Labor social media team is very pilled, or they understand that this is still a base that's worth signaling to.
Or they know how much it upsets liberals, or even your Never Trump Republicans, who hate QAnon more than anything because it to them it made the whole conservative movement look like complete idiots, completely disconnected from reality. So that's like the third option is that they know that people know where it's coming from. They know that some journalist is going to go, why is the Department of Labor doing where we go one, we go, blah, blah, blah. They know it's going to cause a reaction. And that is, unfortunately, a part of politics now is this like sort of like antagonistic nature that I really think, began, in 2016 with Donald Trump.
I mean, look, it's rage bait, and it's that's the currency of the internet. I think that if they have the opportunity to get a bunch of libs mad, so they can own the libs online, then like that's a perfectly acceptable thing for them to do as far as they're concerned. How many people do you think we're talking about here? Because you're talking about this contingent, and I think for normies like myself, like I cannot grasp a world where there are more than like a handful of them in some MySpace group or some Facebook group circa like 2013, but like roughly what are we talking about here in terms of raw numbers?
It's pretty bad. Travis, the last numbers were really bad.
I'll confess I haven't checked on the polling. People haven't done polling on QAnon belief in a couple of years, but like last they checked, it was in the neighborhood of sometimes like 4 or 5%, which is millions
of
and millions
America?
of Americans. Yeah. It's
that's like 15 to 17 million people.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And
yes, people
that's
are
also
pilled.
That's also happens to be roughly the same level of polling for belief in that there's a cabal of lizard people who rule the world. There's lots of people who believe some silly things.
We're getting close to like the number of people who think that Tylenol is safe. Like we're going to have more people who believe in QAnon than believe that like you can take Tylenol and be okay.
But like, look how powerful QAnon is to a certain degree. I mean, if you watch that original Marjorie Taylor Greene Facebook post video where she's going over all the Q stuff, she's not looking great, but her steadfast belief in QAnon propelled her to, some of the highest levels of power one can achieve in America, only now to have her kind of back away from it. Now, she's an interesting example of somebody whose true beliefs might put them at odds with the president. Now, I don't want to give Marjorie Taylor Greene that kind of credit. I think it's probably more likely that she kind of just senses where the wind is going and is an opportunist and doesn't actually believe in anything and will go wherever she feels is like, most advantageous for her. But there is an example of a very public person who has, gone against Donald Trump in the wake of how he's handled the Epstein files.
I'm curious what the reaction has been to her, because she was even more bought in. I mean, she was a better representative, a clear representative of the whole QAnon movement than Trump ever was. But there is a lot of allegiance to Donald Trump within the whole QAnon movement too. And so now that those two hate each other, are in conflict with each other, where does the movement more closely align with? Like, is it Trump, even though he was never really like a QAnon, true believer like Marjorie Taylor Greene was?
Greene is interesting because, she was someone who very sincerely believed she was on the QAnon bandwagon just a couple months after the first Q drops. And then she somehow got into Congress. But the problem was that she was a true believer. According to reporting, one of the things that caused the rift is that she pushed for release of the Epstein files, which Trump was a lot more uncomfortable with. And it was really interesting. If you watch her video in which she announced her resignation, which was it was in November of last year, she said that there is no plan to save the world and no 4D chess being played. This seems to be a direct reference to QAnon. The plan to save the world is a very successful, very popular QAnon video. So she seems to be saying what got her to stop believing some of the wilder claims of QAnon was working with Trump directly.
Yeah, but I mean, there's irony in that the whole basis of this thing is that Trump is going to be the salvation, right?
Yeah, that's the big fantasy. But like I said, it was like we have the only example of a QAnon true believer who got to Congress and was able to work with Trump himself. Wound up coming to realize that that's not true. He's not the savior.
I'd be curious to know how many people lost faith in Trump, because you have this one true believer. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is now at odds with Trump over this very issue, is because he's the one suppressing these files and clearly implicated in these files. If that's not enough for a bunch of these people to say, look, if Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's like the only one in Washington, D.C., who's actually like, on our level, if even she is going to break with Trump because of his involvement in all of this stuff that we claim to condemn, then like, how is that not good enough for these people who've put their faith in Trump?
That's a good question.
I think, I'm coming here with logic too. A lot of this is you kind of have to suspend that.
Yeah, I mean, we are increasingly barreling towards a world where it's of no use to look at time poorly spent and reflect. If that makes any sense,
Yeah.
Why go? Because now at this point, if you're still on the QAnon bandwagon, you've now waited through 4 years of Trump, 4 years of Biden, and a year into this new administration for Hillary Clinton to be perp walked, and it's just the opposite. It seems like Hillary Clinton is doing far, far better than Trump is. So at this point, you would have to say, you know what? Wow, these last 10 years almost that I've spent are wasted. That's really hard for people to do. You can do it. I just, right before we jumped on, I checked one of the very popular pro QAnon accounts on X. Or Twitter, whatever. And the post today was, taking a break, gonna go spend some time with my family.
It's bad when even the terminally online people are like, hey, I'm gonna go touch grass outside right now.
And that is, I think, in my opinion, probably the best thing that could come from this for people who are still wrapped up in conspiracy theories, QAnon, all that stuff. Is if it makes them upset enough to want to take a break, one thing that we've seen over time is that the less time you spend on the internet and the more time you spend with loved ones, family, something that's grounded in reality, these conspiracies you can become less passionate about them as other things sort of take their place. But that's, it's for a lot of people, it's fun. I was on Blue Sky and Threads looking at all of the posts about Epstein and all of this stuff. And look, people are baking. It's fun to go online and try to figure out a narrative that makes sense, no matter what political aisle you sort of reside on. And it's tough. As long as the internet's there's going to be people that are going to have a narrative for you that aligns with something that you like, and it's increasingly useless to try to go, well, this is just from this one source, or who is this from? Let me go check. I'm going to see what this other outlet is publishing to get the real idea. It's way easier to just find something that you go, yeah, that sounds right to me, and that's reality.
You guys said something interesting in our last conversation that stuck with me, and that is that there's always going to be a new, if you're in the world of conspiracy theory, there's always going to be another conspiracy theory to explain away conspiracy theories that aren't neatly resolved,
right,
or that don't make sense. And so I say that as the backdrop for this question. Will there come a point where Trump will have been in office 4 years during his first term, 4 years during his second term, and and even now, with full control of government, full control of the Department of Justice, he's got as compliant an attorney general as you could possibly ask for. We're still not going to see, Hillary Clinton perp walked because of some, pedophile ring in the basement of a pizza place. It's just not going to happen. And so will there ever be a point where those folks who believed in all of this stuff will say, even under the best conditions possible, all of our people in charge, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, all those people, we're not getting what we want. Maybe it was always bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, the research really shows that conspiracism is a mindset, and that does something for people. It aids sort of sometimes even social bonds. I mean, being a conspiracist gives you instant access to a passionate community who are kind of interested in the same things as you. It's sort of sometimes it's more of a way to ward off uncertainty and fear and anxiety and loneliness more than it is an earnest attempt to find the truth. So yeah, for that reason, of course, there's always going to be people who concoct these elaborate theories, not because they're really interested in uncovering corruption, but because it makes them feel connected, makes them feel special in a way that nothing else does.
It's more like it's a journey, not the destination type deal.
Yeah.
Jake, what do you think?
When one reason that I started the QAA pod was because I myself a default kind of to conspiratorial thinking. I was working in the entertainment industry, and I always wanted to be a screenwriter, and so I followed conspiracy theories casually because I loved the story. I was always looking for a really interesting story, and I can tell you that when I was at my most vulnerable and susceptible to believing conspiracy theories and even being pulled further right wing, I credit finding more lefty political podcasts like Chapo Trap House and just other people in the lefty space that were critical of government but not going to such a conspiratorial means. I think in a lot of ways that saved me from going further right. And I can tell you that at that time in my life, I was struggling financially. I was lonely. A lot of my friends were partnered up and were kind of feeling like they had moved on with their adult lives. I was angry. I was bitter at people who were having more success than I was, and that is when I was the most susceptible. So I think a lot of it has to do with where people are in their lives. Which can change, there are times when you can be really susceptible to these kind of things, and there are times when life is so good outside of the internet that these theories hold a lot less weight. So unfortunately, the answer is, as long as there is this community there to accept people who are lost, who are looking for an answer, who are looking for somebody to blame, there's always going to be these communities online, especially there to welcome them with open arms. But that's not to say that there aren't points of exit. And my hope is that, I don't know. Part of me is I hope Trump makes it the 4 years because if he dies in office, there's going to be a new slew of conspiracy theories about who poisoned him or whatnot. But my hope is that in the decades to come, that maybe we can sort of pull back. I don't know. I mean, the people who have the power to do so, which is the people who run these big social media companies, it seems like they're not on our side. So, especially given some of the revelations from the Epstein emails. So I don't know. It's kind of a bad answer. I sort of think people are just going to continue to get more pilled and more segregated unless we can find some kind of political figure who can make everybody feel loved and listened to. I don't know. It's a bad answer.
Yeah. No. I mean, that does make sense. Well, I am curious because you mentioned moving forward, in time here. Is there something on the horizon that somebody like me, again, in kind of the more normie space of the internet, doesn't know is coming, but is coming, like in very much the same way that I learned about QAnon last. Like I'm not in those corners of the internet, but I'm curious, like what's coming down the pike that we should know about?
Liberal QAnon.
Well, I think people are already kind of like aware of this, but like I think partly in consequence to the fact that that Trump was reelected, a lot of social media networks like Facebook sort of like just took off the guardrails. You know, there was like before they had some sort of moderation and fact checking efforts before, but boy, those are all but gone now. That's better for their bottom line because they have to invest in less moderation, and like is good because they the clicks from conspiracists are just as good as the clicks from everyone else. And so there's lots more nonsense that's going to. So you have to be more guarded. You have to be a cautious person. I mean, we saw this with the recent release of the new Epstein documents. There were some fake ones floating around. Like with Elon Musk, it is true that there are a few emails that show him actively trying to get invited to the island. But there's one in particular. It says something like, can I go? Oh, girls for the win. I think it was what it said.
Yeah.
It was that one is totally fake. But a lot of people thought it was real. But like it's like one of those things. It's very convincing. I mean, that's all. It's like as bad as sort of like misinformation was before. The fact that now there's essentially no regulatory pressure on these social media companies now means that you have to be a conscious consumer of social media in the moving forward.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to my buddy Dave from college yesterday, and he actually put it really succinctly, and he said that I asked him if something was real or not, because he had sent me one of the files, actually one of the documents from the Epstein files, and I asked, "Is this real?" And he said, "I just assume that everything is real and also that everything is AI." And like you just like the line between what's real and what's not is just obliterated these days, where we are immersed in so much lunacy that if you told me any of this stuff was real, I'd believe you, because look at what's happening. Look at the world we're living in. But at the same time, if you told me it was all fake, I'd believe you if you said that too.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I'm getting videos coming across my feed, and it's like, can you tell the difference between the AI and the real one? And I can't anymore. I think past 40 years old, you lose that ability to detect AI. Maybe it's just me, but I think that's where we're going. That's what to look out for. And the sad truth is that it's already here. I mean, we used to never talk about AI on the podcast. Now I feel like every other episode we have to debunk like some kind of AI image or video or something. There were so many that came out revolving around the two ICE murders. I mean, the two most recent ICE murders, I should say. It's just... yeah, it's exhausting, and all I can say is to folks listening is just to try to have a little bit of patience. There's such a rush for information to come out, and there's this whole ecosystem of influencers and independent journalists who really want to be first on the scene with some kind of narrative, and it's really easy to just kind of take that as fact, but as I've seen, if you wait long enough, usually enough information comes out that you can kind of have some picture of the truth, and that's okay. And that's okay. So maybe a picture is all we're able to get, but it's better than nothing. Totally.
Hey, Jake and Travis, where can folks who are watching right now or listening right now see and hear more from you?
Yeah, you can check us out on any podcasting app. Go to QAA and you can find our free feed. If you like what we do, we also have a Patreon, which we offer premium episodes. We also have a podcast network where we do really fun mini-series about topics like online trad wives. It's called Curse Media. You can find that at cursemedia.net.
Awesome. I'm going to put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Jake and Travis, thank you guys for the time. Thanks for navigating the corners of the internet that save us from having to navigate those corners. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Brian.
Always a pleasure, man. Good to talk to you.